Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat datang lagi teman-teman di kajian pencinta kristologi. Bang Nong kali ini akan mengupload sebuah video yang berisi informasi mengenai fakta nama Allah yang kita pakai sebagai nama Tuhan di dalam Islam. Bukanlah sebuah nama yang asing bagi orang Yahudi. Seandainya mereka mau fair, jujur, dan tidak membohongi diri sendiri, sebenarnya nama Allah adalah nama Tuhan bagi mereka juga. Di dalam bahasa Yahudi, mereka biasa memanggilnya dengan sebutan Eloh atau Elohim. Selamat menyaksikan teman-teman. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله عليه صلاة
Shalom. I hope this works. This is a little bit different camera than I normally use. Different computer, different camera. Hopefully this records somewhat well. Basically, what I want to do is debunk this myth that the Arabic term Allah, as they say, is an evil term referring to a moon god or a demon or you know, a false god or a curse or whatever. With this, I want to look at three different languages which are extremely similarly related. Hebrew, Aramaic, and Arabic. Okay? Now, Hebrew and Aramaic are almost identical languages when you look at the grand scope of all the words. The alphabet in Hebrew and Aramaic is the exact same. Now, Arabic is a little bit further off than Hebrew, but yet it's very similar language. When you pronounce all the letters in Hebrew correctly, it sounds like Arabic. Most people, when you pronounce Hebrew correctly, most people say that sounds like Arabic, but actually Arabic sounds like Hebrew when Hebrew is correctly pronounced, when all the letters are correctly pronounced, which is not really the case in modern dialects of Hebrew, and most modern dialects of Hebrew, except for Yemenite, perhaps. Now, so we have a root word, and that is Aleph Lamed He. Aleph Lamed He. It means God, or supreme being, or supreme entity, supreme one, high, mighty. You know, we use the term God. Some people don't like the term God, which is completely understandable, because in Hebrew, God means fortune. And it was the name of a pagan deity worshipped, I think, by the Babylonians or something. Okay, you know, that's fine. But when I'm using the term God here, I'm just using it for familiarity's sake. So, basically, this three-letter root word in Hebrew, Aleph Lamed He, means God. Now, in Hebrew it has a different, slightly different pronunciation, but the same root word in Aramaic means the same thing. Aleph Lamed He in Aramaic, as opposed to Hebrew, still means God. In Arabic, Aleph Lamed He, it means the same thing as it does in Aramaic and Hebrew. In Hebrew, Aramaic, and Arabic, Aleph Lamed He means God. Okay, all three languages. So there's, in Hebrew, and they have slightly different pronunciations, but the root word, the consonants are the exact same. Aleph, Lamed, He. Now, looking, there's a portion in actually the Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh. There's portions which are written in Aramaic, Daniel, Ezra, so on and so forth. Now, I want to show you, I have this JPS, Hebrew English, there we go, Hebrew English Tanakh. And I will read to you from Ezra, verse 5, here at the bottom where you see this Hey. Chapter 5, excuse me. Ezra chapter 5, this section is written in Aramaic. I will read you the phrase at the end of Ezra chapter 5, verse 1. At the end of verse 1, it says the phrase, God of Israel. Now this is written in Aramaic, like I said. How does this read in the Hebrew Bible in Aramaic for the phrase, God of Israel? And it reads, Allah Yisrael. Okay? That's an Aleph, Lamed, He. The same things when Arabs say Allah, they're saying God. That's what it means. It's the exact same. Allah in Aramaic, Allah, and also in Aramaic, another way of saying Aleph, Lamed, He, God, is Allah in Aramaic. That's strikingly similar to Allah in Arabic. No real difference here. There's not really, it's, again, it's the same word. So here we have this phrase, Allah Yisrael, the God of Israel, which is, it's the exact same thing. The Arab equivalent is like very little difference. Vowels are a little bit different. The consonants are the same. What I'm trying to say here is Aleph, Lamed, He means God in three major Semitic languages: Hebrew, Aramaic, and Arabic. Those three languages are all extremely closely related, and that is why they have sometimes the exact same root words for meanings of words. The root word here, Aleph, Lamed, He, means God. Allah is the Arabs call on, means God, nothing else. Okay? Even Yemenite Jews in the synagogues, there's a tradition, they will read the Torah in Hebrew, Aramaic, and Arabic. And when they read the Torah, in Arabic, they say Allah. Is there anything wrong with this? No, because it means God. Just as it does in Hebrew and Aramaic. Okay, so with that, I'm going to close. I hope I've made this as clear and straightforward as possible. Really not that hard. It's just people, it's just kind of like ridiculous lack of knowledge and people's kind of overall ridiculousness, to be honest with you. It's just, there's so many, opinions and confusions that people spew as if they know everything in the world. And here I am, I'm not claiming to know everything, but I'm simply telling you this is the simple truth to this matter, is that Aleph, Lamed, He means God in Hebrew, Aramaic, and Arabic. And in Arabic it's pronounced Allah, that it means God, no different. Thank you, bye.
May the peace of God and His compassions and blessing be upon you. In this video I want to talk about Allah, the God of Abraham. Often among Christians and Jews I hear opposition against use of the term Allah in reference to the Creator, the God of Abraham, on the basis of several misunderstandings and lack of information. One of these is that the name Allah is, in Hebrew, the word for curse, which is, first of all, patently not true. We'll start off by showing you what the name Allah looks like in Arabic. There are 4 letters when it's represented in Hebrew. The Arabic name Allah in Hebrew letters. Aleph, Lamed, Lamed, He. The Hebrew word for curse is only 3 letters. Aleph, Lamed, He. Clearly they don't look the same. Although the Arabic name Allah could be written in 3 letters in Hebrew, by inserting a dot, a dagesh, inside the lamed, the middle letter, the L. That is not how it's written. But even if it were, it still wouldn't mean anything. It wouldn't mean that Allah means curse any more than the Hebrew name for God, Allah, means curse. Because the Hebrew name for God, Allah, is written with exactly the same letters as the Hebrew word for curse. Aleph Lamed He, Aleph Lamed He. The difference is the vowels. Likewise with the Aramaic term for God, Aleph Lamed He and Aleph Lamed He. The exact same letters, only difference are the vowels. Vowel pronunciation can significantly change the meaning of a word, even in English. Take, for example, the word curse in English and the name Chris, which happens to be based on the name for the Christian Messiah, Christ. Chris and curse. The consonants that are sounded with your mouth when you make this are exactly the same. A K, an R, and an S. So anyone who wants to consider Allah to be a false god and not the God of Abraham because it has some semblance to the Hebrew word for curse, they must likewise consider the God of Christians a curse. But that's not the point of this video, and I don't consider the God of Christians to be a curse. What I would like to show, first of all, is the similarity. The Hebrew name for God, one of them, it simply means deity. In Hebrew, this term isn't used exclusively for the Creator, but it means deity, is Allah. The Aramaic is Allah, but without emphasizing the L. Hence this one L without a dot. Allah. It can also be pronounced Allah. The Arabic word is Allah. The difference is mainly the elongation of the L. Allah as opposed to Allah. You can find this three-letter spelling of the Hebrew name of God, Allah, in the Hebrew Bible several times in reference to the Creator, the God of Abraham. It can be spelled both with 3 letters or with 4 letters.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
When it's spelled with 4 letters, it's this called the full spelling. That is because a letter is being used and added to the word to represent one of the vowels. In this case, the holam, the O sound. But the essence of the word, the root of the word, is only 3 letters, and it appears several times in the Hebrew Bible in reference to God with only 3 letters. Same thing with the Aramaic word Allah. This appears several times in the Aramaic portions of the Hebrew Bible. I've counted in the book of Daniel at least 7 times when this appears, both in reference to false deities and also in reference to the God of Israel. Some additional reasons given for not using the name Allah, not simply not using it, but objecting to anyone using it in reference to the Creator, is based upon belief. I'm not 100% convinced that it's true or not, but personally I don't think it makes a difference. And that is the belief that in ancient Arabia, there was an idol named Allah. And hence, Allah is an idol. And if you pray to Allah, you're praying to an idol. Whether or not there was an idol named Allah makes no difference. What makes a difference is the intention of the people who are praying to the one they call Allah. If when they say Allah, they're thinking of some idol or some physical being in some particular location, or some human being, like the Nation of Islam, then I would agree that that is a false deity. But if the individual is praying to one whom they call Allah, and they have in their mind no conception of any form or any corporality, but the historical God who created the universe, then that is not a false God. Regardless of any disagreement as to how the creator of the universe interacted with mankind. If this isn't a good enough explanation for you, then I will have to request all Christians and anyone else who uses the term God to abstain, please, from using the term God, because the English term God, even in the Hebrew Bible, is used in reference to the name of a false deity. You can find this in Isaiah chapter 65, verse 11. God. There, people are being rebuked for setting up a table in worship of God. So much for the communion table done in honor of God. Another problem and objection to Islam, not that I agree with everything in Islam, but objection should be based on reason and not misunderstanding and contradictory and hypocritical evidences. Another objection given in protest of worshiping Allah is that it was the moon god, and even today you see Muslims often wearing or incorporating symbols of the crescent moon in their architecture or whatever else. You even find the crescent symbol referred to in the Hebrew Bible in reference to pagan Arabians, though I don't think they were yet Arabic speaking, but in any case it appears. Now this doesn't mean that the deity that Arabs worship or Muslims worship is the moon god, even if the moon was associated at one time in history with Arabian idolatry, any more than the Star of David would imply that Jews are worshiping some kind of star god. And after all, it does state in the book of the prophet Amos, verse 26, that God rebukes the people of Israel for having worshipped false gods and having made a star in representation of this God. The same can be true with the cross. I don't believe that Christians, when they intend their minds to the creator of the universe without form and likeness, to be idolaters simply because the cross, which is worn around the necks of millions of Christians, was also common in pre-Christian idolatries. A few other reasons I have for objecting to objection of use of the name Allah is because the ancient rabbis of the people of Israel, throughout the exile, up until their even coming to the modern state of Israel, used the term Allah in reference to the creator, the God of Israel, both in their holy writings, which they wrote in Judeo-Arabic, and in songs of praise. Until this day, in very traditional Middle Eastern Jewish communities, on Shabbat and on holidays, you can hear them praying and praising to the creator of the universe using the term Allah. I know this firsthand from people I know, and I've read it in books. There are many examples of this use in extremely popular Jewish literature, which today is mainly known only via more recent Hebrew translation, some of them older translations, but books which are commonly known of among observant Jews, which were originally written in Arabic, incorporating use of the name Allah. These include the book Kuzari, the book Duties of the Heart, the book Modeh Nevuchim, Guide for the Perplexed, the book The Guide for Serving God, Maspikra Obdeh Hashem, the earliest known complete commentary on the Mishnah, Rambam's commentary on the Mishnah, and of course Rav Sa'adir Gaon, the Rasag's Arabic translation running commentary on the Torah, the Law of Moses. I've recently heard it objected to, use of the term Allah, for reason that, regardless of all the things I've said so far, the God of Israel and the God of Abraham doesn't have the spite and hatred and evil, unbridled anger, as you may find in a human, as we find in Allah, the God of the Qur'an, who, in punishment for the heathens, will send them to the fires of hell and burn and roast them, and once they're finished roasting, he will heal them just to roast them again. Now, I also object to this concept, and I don't agree with it at all. However, this doesn't mean that the deity that Muslims who do believe that this will happen is a different deity from the one that religious Jews worship. Why? Well, a disagreement over the thoughts and plans of the Creator doesn't mean that those who have disagreement over his plans or his will are disagreeing on who he himself is. Or let's go to more recent things. Those who are convinced that God, the God of Israel, did certain miracles by means of certain great Kabbalistic sages. He's not worshipping a different God than a Jew who has doubt regarding those miracles. I wrote the following analogy to put it simply. Let's say two people know the same boss. Just because they disagree as to the plans of the boss doesn't mean that they have two different bosses. And just because perhaps they disagree as to the boss's will doesn't mean that they each work for a different boss. Muslims, Jews, and the original followers of Jesus, who said that the greatest commandment is, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." For all three of these, the Creator is one, absolute existence. He is not subject to change. He neither shares his essence or divinity with another, nor does he have origin in something else, nor does he multiply his divinity, and his singularity is incorporeal and incomparable to any other. I like to finish this video off with a quote from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 32, verse 29, where in Hebrew it states, "There is no God with me." And in the Aramaic translation of Umkris, it states, "Leth Allah bar minni." مع السلامة حياكم الله.
My dear brothers and sisters, I was asked the question whether Allah is the same God as the God of the Old Testament. And I would like to elaborate on that. The answer to that question is yes. The Muslim concept of Allah is exactly the same as the Jewish concept of Hashem. Therefore, no matter what you hear, some people like to claim that Allah is the moon god or whatever you hear, this is all nonsense. And I just would like to say that, I really respect the monotheism of Muslims. The fact that they worship one God, the fact that they don't tolerate any sort of partnership to God, any sort of physicality or plurality to God. So this is something I think that's exactly in line with the teachings of the Torah. And as hard as it is to admit, but certain things I think the Muslims are doing it more correctly than we as Jews do. The Allah is really the same God of the Torah. Allah is the same God of the Torah. And as I said, the only argument Muslims and Jews have is whether Muhammad was a prophet or not. That's really the only argument.
قل يا أهل الكتاب لستم على شيء حتى تقيموا التوراة والإنجيل وما أنزل إليكم من ربكم وليزيدن كثيرا منهم ما أنزل إليك من ربك طغيانا وكفرا فلا تأس على القوم الكافرين. الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا